Hello and welcome to this. I don't know why my voice sounded like that. Next episode of the Quickview. This is not on all these movie series. This is actually about something that I've wanted to talk about for a decent bit of time, and these have every single one of these has something in common. I don't know. You'll be obviously be able to read the title, so I don't know why I'm going through all this hullabaloo, but every single one of these has a prequel in it. And that's just something that I was thinking about recently because I've really only been writing prequels for a decent amount of time. And especially since I just recently watched Wonka, that was the thing that kind of really sparked my wanting to talk about this because I think a lot of people don't understand that prequels are like really hard to write well, and as me being someone who's only written prequels, actually that is true because I wrote Cards 0 and then I wrote Cards -1 and they're both prequels to each other. I didn't write any sequels. I think prequels are probably one of the hardest things to do. These are probably the only notable things that I have as prequels, and some of these honestly I wouldn't even consider to be prequels. Like barely, honestly, Wonka's probably the only one that actually is fully 100% a prequel. I do have other ones, but like prequels aren't good, man. I don't have. I used to have the X-Men full like collection, and it has X-Men First Class. That's probably like the best prequel out there, which kind of a low bar, but so yeah, just a lot of things that are really annoying with prequels is number one, you have to make like Willy Wonka having a prequel. This is one of the worst ideas probably of all time to make a prequel about Willy Wonka. And I do not mean that with any sort of exaggeration. I was when I heard that this had a prequel, dude, I was probably I was never gonna watch this thing. I kept laughing because I was like, we're gonna figure out how we found the Oompa Loompas. Like that is the dumbest thing, bro. I hate when prequels do that. Prequels are like, oh, actually, you know what? Let me pause this for a quick second. I'll be right back. So I'm back, and then yeah, these are also two other prequels I'll get into in a bit. But like Willy Wonka trying to have a prequel is so stupid because number one, you don't need to know anything about Willy Wonka. Nothing. If you watch the movie Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory, there is no information that is needed to understand the movie. Nothing. There is not a single thing to understand from Willy Wonka having a prequel. Not one bit of information could transfer over to the beginning and would change anything. And that's something that I don't know why there's so many more prequels coming out these days. Um, like I think I can't remember off the top of my head, but they're now making like prequels all over the place. Like Fantastic Beasts is actually probably a really good prequel in terms of ideas, not in terms of execution because I haven't watched Fantastic Beasts, but apparently the first one's like 8 out of 10. But like Fantastic Beasts is it's not taking place with the main character. That's the number one thing that prequels have a really, really hard time with. And that's when I was writing Card Zero. You have to make it basically this character. Like if you're making a prequel to Willy Wonka literally has to like barely show up. Like he basically better be a cameo because it makes the whole story stupid. Because it's like, okay, so Willy Wonka, if we're taking it, apparently it is a prequel to the 1970s version, which I still don't believe because there's too many contradictions to allow it. But even if there is, just one to one, he meets a guy named Slugworth who is an Indian guy in this movie, and then in the original movie, Slugworth's a white dude. So what happened? Um, was there a cleansing of some kind between the events of Wonka and Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory? Is there two people named Slugworth? What happened? It's like you can't even really get over that fact. Oh, you know what? I gotta pause it again. 1 second. I actually keep on having more things to talk about with more prequels, but I was originally thinking that there's really not a lot of prequels, and there still are not, because even like the most famous prequel that everyone seems to always get up in arms about is The Hobbit, but The Hobbit was written first. It isn't a prequel. It's just the progenitor. It's not a prequel at all. But anyway, as I was saying, like, yeah, I wrote Card Zero where I had the entire story. It's basically just, for simply because it's not, I have to re-edit it and whatever, but like the main protagonist of Cards 1 is essentially like Willy Wonka. And then I have a prequel to it where it's his brother is in the same squad as the main character. So you basically go through the entire adventure with the character from the prequel, Doug, and then his brother dies, and that's just a small part that motivates his character into being who he is. There's nothing else that the prequel is its own story. That's the only thing that is there, which does make your prequel worth something, because just having it be a whole prequel about Willy Wonka, like it doesn't make any sense, because it 99% of the time, like Solo, a Star Wars story, it's like, bro, no one cares how he got his name. Solo. My name is Solo. Like, no, that is like your legal name, dude. Like, it doesn't. I hate that. I hate that so much. Or like even this. Like, he hung out with 8 people and they're not in the first movie. So this movie could just be written out and it doesn't change anything. Or how he found the Oompa Loompas. Bro, he just found the Oompa Loompas. There's no like deeper meaning. It's a dude who creates fizzy lifting drinks and owns a chocolate factory. That's it. So, yeah, Willy Wonka. This is a good prequel though, because it's just basically you could do like anything with Willy Wonka, so it's fine. It's not great, but like it's fine. And yeah, so this one's like as an idea though, it's like it's good. It's a good movie. It's like a solid 8 out of 10. I would actually rewatch this. I will. I have rewatched it. I will probably rewatch it in the future. I liked it. But it's still just as a prequel, it's unnecessary. It just doesn't it doesn't add anything. So yeah, I'm just gonna put this away for a second. So now we get like this. Well, I'm gonna make my own separate video on Back to the Future because it is probably the perfect trilogy in my opinion. But Back to the Future is like, I don't even know how it would technically define to, but it's a prequel sequel where they use like the last third of the movie is a like I don't even know how to explain it, because they go back in time to the events of the first movie. It's like a prequel sequel, but it uses that to be really brilliant. It ties in really well. It's like kind of barely even a prequel anyway. It's more of a sequel, but I still consider it like it does have a little prequel aspects to it, but I think it's fine. It's just I had to mention it because it does reuse a lot. It's so on the teetering edge of it's cheap, but no, it's actually pretty smart. I like it. And then you get the two examples of like these two. Most people wouldn't even know they are prequels. That's what I think makes a really good prequel. That's why The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly and The Last Crusade, they are both prequels, but if you told people who really weren't paying attention to the movie, they wouldn't even know. Because, like, actually, you know what? For Indiana Jones and The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, if you watched them first, there's no way you'd even know that they weren't prequels. The reason for that being is, for Last Crusade, they just like put down on the bottom of the screen it takes place in it takes place before the events of the other movies, where they say the date and he's with his dad, but they like don't make a story like, yeah, sure, he meets his dad, but you could put that in a movie that takes place after Temple of Doom, and nothing would change. It's basically they just the whole movie's a sequel, but they happen to make it a prequel. If you get what I mean, the whole movie, if you just changed a few dates, would be a sequel. It would not be a prequel. Same with Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. It's so unnoticeable. You would honestly have to be really paying attention to know that it takes place before the Civil War. I think it's like one comment or something. It's been so long since I've seen all three of them in a row. So these two, I would barely even qualify. They are prequels. They probably are the best prequels aside from X-Men First Class, but like they to me they barely even count. And especially with like Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, it's not even really mentioned. Like at least in Indiana Jones, they show the year, so there's no way that you could like mess that up. But it's like it doesn't really matter because the whole point of the story has nothing to do with the fact that it is a prequel. It's just a story in the Indiana Jones universe. This is a story that takes place in the Sergio Leone Dollars trilogy verse. It doesn't have to take place in, like The Hobbit. The movie, I guess, technically would be a prequel, but it's not, whatever. But they marketed it as this is a prequel to, The Lord of the Rings. When Indiana Jones 3 came out, it was just, here's a third Indiana Jones movie. Good, Bad, and the Ugly. It's the third Dollars movie. There's nothing else to say about that. So, good movies, because they don't, have to hammer in crap, like Wonka. Wonka has to tell you, oh, Willy Wonka, how did we find the Oompa Loompas? Mr. William Wonka, where are the Oompa Loompas? And then, this is kind of an honorable mention because I don't know if I'd count it, but it's probably the most famous, one of the most famous ones, where Casino Royale is like a reboot / prequel, because it's his first mission, but there's like a lot of movies before then. Still, Casino Royale is yet another, I guess I would technically qualify it, although you'd have to consider it like a prequel / sequel. Because it would be like Back to the Future, where, yeah, it's based off of Casino Royale, which is the first James Bond movie. So, the first James Bond book. So, yeah, technically it is a prequel, but it takes place in the modern day. Kind of like a maybe, but Casino Royale is, so good. But again, it doesn't really, it's similar in this category of it really is not trying to market itself as a prequel. It's trying to make itself be one of the greatest movies of all time, at least one of the best James Bond movies of all time. So just an honorable mention. It's still a thing. Speaking of the thing, so I haven't finished the 2011 The Thing. This is okay. So this is one where it's teetering on the edge of it's cool, but they had to. So if you've never watched The Thing, which if you do, you need to turn this video off right now. I am begging you, go watch the Thing 1980s version. It is one of the greatest movies ever. But they made a prequel in 2011. I hate the naming scheme too of all these prequels that have these. They're the exact same movie. You have to just say The Thing 2011. But the 2011 version actually is really smart. They went back and they watched the Thing and saw what happened to the research team with the limited amount of footage, and they recreated it. That's actually not that bad. I mean, I don't think it's it's honestly pretty inspired. But again, the fate of everyone in the beginning of the movie of The Thing. They do have it on a cliffhanger. I mean, I'm spoiling a movie that's 15 years old, but they have it again where you don't know if she lives or dies, the protagonist of the 2011 version, but it doesn't matter because she probably would have died anyway. I mean, even if she didn't, it doesn't matter because again, it's supposed to be telling you what happens before the 1987 version of the thing. Also, the thing 2011 did get shafted because they literally did everything in amazing practical effects. I've seen the YouTube videos, and I like, oh, I hate the fact that they ruined that movie. It would have been great if they left the practical effects in it. I mean, I saw it. The videos on YouTube are astounding. They would have made that movie for even cheaper, and it would probably have been really good. Not like a perfect movie, because it's still, I heard it, I haven't finished it, but I heard it's not as good as the 1980 version. But again, like, okay, yeah, it's cool, but it really doesn't do anything. It's almost a pointless act. That's why, like, prequels, again, are just so hard to make good, where the really successful ones are, James Bond, Indiana Jones, the Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. But like, I wouldn't even qualify those as prequels. This and Wonka are prequels, but again, this is at least a better attempt at a prequel, because Willy Wonka, it's like, who cares about the Oompa Loompas? This is at least semi-interesting, because this does, it raises a lot more questions, where it's like, okay, they actually are seen on TV in the events of the 1987 version. So it's like, it's not weird that they are there. They're not, the characters are not inserted retroactively. Like in Wonka, 99% of the cast is inserted retroactively. They were there in the beginning of the 1980 version. So it's at least an inspired, I think this is one of the few inspired prequels. I still don't think the movie's that good. Haven't watched it, but again, it's just another problem with prequels of like, what is the point of this movie? You could just watch the original. But I think this one, at least, like that much, it's inspired enough to where I would say this is a worthy-ish prequel. It's at least worthy of its idea. The idea of it is at least more inspired than, like, how did Willy Wonka find the Oompa Loompas? And then we get into probably the most divisive of all prequels, probably the most, I won't even say that. It's the most famous prequel of all time, probably. I would still say the prequels suck. And, I don't think they're, Episode 1 is like a 5 out of 10. Episode 2 is terrible. Episode 3 is like a 6.5 out of 10. But the Star Wars prequels, if not for the Clone Wars TV show, would be hated a lot more than they are today. I don't think the idea of a prequel, and this is where I was already like a few years into me writing Card Zero, and I see why making a direct prequel like this, and like, Wonka, where it's following a main character, like The Rise of Darth Vader, on paper, that's a good idea. I think that's like double thumbs up. Who would not want to see that? But a lot of your, like, it's just explaining details that really don't need to be explained. And a lot of the dialogue is, like, honestly, 100% contradictory. There are some dialogue things where, yeah, Ben can say from a certain point of view, it's just straight up wrong. He was my best friend, and then he literally chopped him in half, bro. Like, it doesn't matter if he's your best friend or not, you chopped him in half. He's more machine now than man. That implies so much more different. And even like the framing of the movie, it ain't even in the same universe, dude. When Yoda as a character symbolizes, because again, Star Wars is a very, and I didn't say again, I don't know why I said again. Star Wars is inspired by stuff like Flash Gordon. Flash Gordon is made, like, I'm not saying you're dumb, but like, it's simple. It's simple stuff. Yoda being a small creature, and Luke goes to him and says, "You're a dumb-looking creature. You don't know what you're doing." And then Yoda lifts his arm up and shows the Force, means that you're not supposed to underestimate people. Like, duh. But in Episode 2, he's like flipping around and doing backflips and using his lightsaber. Like, Yoda didn't do that. Get out of here. He didn't do anything like that at all. It's just made up crap for the prequel, because they had to do it, because it's like, well, he's gonna fight Count Dooku, bro, and then like all the other contradictory information, like, he built the Death Star in 20 years. Like, he didn't even have to have, like, Darth Vader was in a suit for 20 years. He and again, he became more machine now than man. Why did everything have to take over the events of like 19 years? It didn't even have to do that. It didn't have to do that. Plus with him being a robot, bro, he could have sired, like, there's so many different things in the prequels that to me are blatant contradictions. And especially the Jedi Knights are an age of, we're using weapons from a more civilized age. Age? AGE? Like, that does not imply, bro. Like, if I was born in the events of the Star Wars universe, if I was born 19 BBY, I would be, like, there. My entire life, I would have heard of cloning technology. Like, it just doesn't make sense. 19 years is, like, way too small to have all that stuff happen. And then they have all, like, the prequel. I would say Star Wars The Clone Wars actually is a pretty good show. It does bridge the gap. There's a little, like, Ahsoka should not be in that show. Ahsoka should not survive. And then, again, that's a problem with introducing characters in the prequels. Like, you do have to have it. As dumb as it was that he killed every single Jedi, I mean, it made sense. They weren't there in the original, but now you have it. So in Star Wars The Clone Wars, Anakin had a Padawan who was friends with everyone like Padme and Obi-Wan, and then she just somehow exists past the events of this, like, 6-year event in after episode 4, and it's just never brought up again. Okay, like, that makes no sense, dude. No. Doesn't make any sense. She died before the events of episode 4, at least, because it doesn't make any sense otherwise. And then we get to probably, again, these are some of the other best prequels of all time. MGS 3 and Devil May Cry 3. I think it speaks for itself. DMC 3, again, though, it's like barely a prequel. And same with I will say Metal Gear Solid 3 is actually probably in another higher tier of, like, I would say this is one of the greatest prequels of all time, MGS 3, because it explains its entire thing is functionally a prequel. It's not like Indiana Jones or James Bond, or, Fistful of Dollars. Its entire setup was a prequel, and having big bosses rise, interesting idea. Nothing really, like, said in the events of the original, but it basically is its own movie, quote unquote. Like, I mean, because a lot of the games are like that, but it's basically its own story. And then at the very end, teeny little tiny information like, okay, that's why he was evil, and then you fill in the blanks. Done. You don't need every aspect. That's what kind of makes 5 and Peace Walker and Portable Ops a little stupid, because it's like, okay, he got betrayed again and he got mad. It's like, you could just play 3 and then play 1 and you get it. You don't need, like, more stories in between. And, like, even with DMC 3, this is another one where I wouldn't even really call this is like a sequel to, this is a sequel, basically. You could put this anywhere else. The only thing is, if you're paying attention, you kill Virgil in DMC 1, so Virgil's alive now. And, in DMC 2, he's gone, so he's dead. So they had to make a prequel, but it's like, it's not really a prequel. They don't go on. It's like, how did Dante become a badass guy flinging a sword around? Well, actually, no, it kind of does. It kind of does. But it's not like, it is not marketed as a, like, full prequel. I guess I'm a bit wrong on that, because the whole point of the story is he learns to fight for humanity when originally he just doesn't care, which would make more sense why he goes and helps people in DMC 1. So I guess it is sort of a faithful-ish prequel. But for the most part, it's really not like, oh, you get to meet all the characters from 1 and 2. Like, 2's not even acknowledged, so it's, not really anything, in that part. And they really blew it out of the park. But again, they had it where they kept the continuity, which is good, and I do respect that. It would be like, again, for Star Wars, they just basically crapped all over it. Like, okay, well, every character in the prequel, there's some of them who survived past the sequels. That's not how it worked. I mean, again, it was after, he was gone. But like in here, they respected that Dante literally went to hell and he died, and Virgil was dead after the events of 1. So they respected that. They didn't like go back on it, until 5. But they like at least gave a canonical reason, like, okay, yes, the events of 2 did happen. We're not going to like retcon stupid crap, and And then for my book, I even made a prequel to 0, and it's, prequels are hard. There's a reason why out of all these, the prequels are still like, oh, anyone can say whatever they want. The prequels are not that good. This is mid. This is a good movie, but again, it's almost like DMC3, or like these two. I don't know if I'd even count those, quite honestly. And then you have Wonka, which is a full prequel, which is like mid. And then you have Back to the Future. Oh, and you do have X-Men. X-Men First Class is good. That's probably like the best prequel, movie-wise, like probably the best prequel off the top of my head, unless there's one like I'm totally missing. Oh, actually, they do have what's it called? Cube Zero. That's a decent movie, but it's like, again, it doesn't really count, because it's like, just change a few things around. But yeah, so those are taking a look at a prequel, and like I said, just random opinions on it. So thanks for watching.